VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker. I am here with a newcomer guest, and I hope that he joins us on a weekly basis. Schedule permitting, we're going to try to do Fridays. This one's going to publish on a Saturday, one day before Vikings at Bears, two 1-4 teams, either competing for a draft pick or trying to salvage a season. I'm here with Tyler Ireland. How are you, good sir?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Dustin?
Not bad. Before I forget, you've been around the Viking space, for quite some time. Where do you write at the moment?
So I'm currently a podcaster with the Daily Norseman, but I also just started writing for PurplePTSD and the Viking Age, and I've previously written for Zone Coverage, so I've been all around.
Okay, and you said Daily Norseman, you still write there?
Yeah, occasionally. I've been focusing a lot more on my podcasting stuff recently with the Mic'd Up podcast with Mike Castellino and Mike Brunetti, who's a Giants fan, I might add, but I very much enjoy getting in both the writing space and the video content space as well. So,
all right. Well, you are formally on VikesNow as of now. And what's your Twitter handle?
At Tyler Ireland NFL.
Okay. All right. We got it. All right. What I want to do, and this becomes significantly more relevant if the Vikings lose Sunday afternoon to the Bears. But what we're going to dedicate the next 14, 15, 16 minutes to is this notion of a potential fire sale for the Vikings. So the first thing I want to ask you out of the gate, will set the tone for all trade candidates and all that, is, are the Vikings already at a point where you think they will or they should start to sell off assets? And if they are not, what does their record have to be?
I think they're already considering, trading some assets. To be honest, I think Kwesi, he's a trader at heart, so obviously he's thinking about a lot of this, but there isn't a strict decision that has been made yet as to who we're going to trade. It's still very much in the air. But I would say the two biggest names are Danielle Hunter and Kirk Cousins. And I think one of those names has some real validity to it as to whether or not they may get traded, and the other one, might be a bit more difficult.
All right, so those are the two biggies. I'm going to guess that we agree at the end of the show. But start us with the logic on Cousins, and please include the no trade clause, because he did not sound very fond, even being asked about it this week.
Yeah.
Where would he be moved? Would he waive the clause? Does it actually happen?
So would Cousins waive the trade clause? I know a lot of people say no, he wouldn't. And, his personality, he very much cares about his family. He loves Minnesota. He's stated in the past that he's wanted to retire in Minnesota. But I feel like it would be foolish to assume that he's going to hunker down and say, no, there's this good team that wants to trade for me, but I'm just going to stay here. If the right opportunity arises for Kirk Cousins to where he can go to a playoff contender, I think his camp will truly consider it, especially if there's an extension being promised by that team. If it's, he gets traded to a team and then he immediately signs like a 2-3 year deal, that's something he'd be very interested in, because as much of a family man that Kirk Cousins is, he has to do what's best for his family. And what the Vikings haven't been able to do for Kirk this year is offer him that stability by giving him that extension that he wants, that last extension of his career. So I think he has to weigh those options out. As for the teams that might be interested, that's where it gets a bit tougher. I know a lot of people have mentioned the Jets because, Zach Wilson, but I truly think Aaron Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett and Robert Saleh are really invested in Zach Wilson. And Rodgers might come back if they make the playoffs. We'll see. But Atlanta's the big team that I look at.
Okay.
And I think that if there's one team that might be interested in Kirk Cousins, it's the Falcons, because they're hovering around 500, a little bit over. I think they're 3-2 right now, correct?
Yes, they are. Yep. Mm-hmm.
They've got Kyle Pitts, Jonnu Smith, those two tight ends that Kirk loves. They've got Drake London, Bijan Robinson, a very strong run game, a good defense. Arthur Smith would be a great fit for what Kirk likes to do offensively, just play action heavy, very Kubiak style. Sometimes I feel like Kevin O'Connell's offense asks a little too much of Kirk because he's constantly having to do hurry up offense and, change things on the fly. He has all this autonomy, but sometimes, maybe Kirk wishes it might be a little bit simpler. That, there's just certain points where Kirk Cousins looks frazzled. And I'm not saying that he's been bad at all. He's, statistically been very good, but maybe get him into a bit more of a comfortable situation where he's not having to carry a team. And I think with Atlanta, they have the pieces in place to where he doesn't have to score 30 points a game and then lose. They have a bit of a defense. They have a bit of a running game. They can set up the play action. So I think that's one team that he would seriously consider, especially with his family ties there as well.
Do you think it is enough for Falcons fans or Falcons ownership to basically go win the NFC South and then lose to the 49ers Eagles? Because I don't think anybody believes that Cousins would get there and take them to a Super Bowl. Is it good enough for the Falcons fan base? We need a guy to get to the postseason.
I don't think they look at it from the lens of, well, we're not going to beat the Niners, we're not going to beat the Eagles. They look at it from the lens of the NFC South. They start there. We've got Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, and Bryce Young in the division. We're competing with the Buccaneers for first place. So we have a chance to win a division right there. And Kirk Cousins would probably be the best quarterback in that division if they acquired him. There's also Desmond Ridder. How much confidence do they have in him to develop? I think was he a first round pick, second round pick, third round pick? I don't even remember.
He was a third.
He's been very inconsistent. Showed a little bit of promise, but not all that much. So I think, with Kirk Cousins, they can at least win the division. Would they do it or not? I think they could. It's just, why trade for him if, he's going to be available in free agency anyway. The only concern is maybe they want to give Ridder a little bit more of a chance. And, if he sucks and they go one and done in the playoffs with Ridder, or if they miss the playoffs, then they can revisit the Kirk Cousins thing. Yeah, but maybe it's a little too early for the Falcons.
And then it's worth noting that they haven't even really looked at Taylor Heineke yet, who showed that he can win some ball games in Washington. Well, before we move on to Hunter, good sir, do you believe, before seeing the Bears game, do you think Kirk Cousins will be traded by Halloween?
I would say no, simply because of the no trade clause. I don't think there's enough teams that are looking for a 35-year-old Kirk Cousins and are willing to give him that extension. There's a lot of teams that drafted young quarterbacks, and there's a lot of teams that went all in with other veteran quarterbacks. Like, he's not going to get traded to the Jets if Rodgers is there. Like, Kirk wouldn't accept that. The Jets wouldn't do it. It doesn't make sense. I mean, maybe you could throw in the Patriots, but they're in the same position as the Vikings. So, why would they, go all in, especially if Kraft is not confident in Belichick long term. Belichick's not getting fired, but he might quote unquote retire. I just don't think there's enough trade interest for Kirk, and the no trade clause does make it kind of difficult. So I would say no, but it's not impossible either.
Yeah, that's what I keep, both of those factors, because it's never made much sense to me as of last weekend when the teams that really kind of made sense, the Patriots, a lot would have to happen in like 2 days for Cousins to get traded, and boom, he signs a 3-year extension, and Belichick is just staying there for 3 more years. It seems like a lot to come together. And then the other fringe ones like the Steelers, to me, that means they'd be mailing in on Kenny Pickett after 17 starts, and the Titans haven't even looked at Will Levis. So I've never quite understood that one. I would say if Brock Purdy breaks his leg this week or next, I think that one would truly add up. I don't even know if they'd want to look at Sam Darnold if Kirk was on the trade block. I think the
Niners are way too all in to settle for their third string, their fourth string quarterback. They don't want to see a repeat of the NFC Championship game where they're relying on their fourth string guy to like go out there and beat a contender.
Yeah,
So
I would say for everybody to be on QB1 watch for teams that are legitimate Super Bowl contenders, because it's really kind of the 49ers. I don't know if the Chiefs or Bills, I don't think they would even care about Cousins if something happened to one of their quarterbacks. But the 49ers, I think, are so thirsty for a Super Bowl that if Brock Purdy did go down this week, kind of like he did last year, that I think then that's when it would really heat up, and that would make all the sense in the world.
and the whole Shanahan connection too there.
Yeah,
and it's been rumored for years, so
yeah,
they're always going to
it
be
will always boggle my mind that the 49ers right now are the only team in football where it kind of doesn't really matter who the quarterback is. Like if Sam Darnold gets in there, we're probably going to be like, all right, they're going to be pretty good. But if Sam Darnold were to get on the Vikings as QB1, we'd be like, oh God. And that's such a weird dynamic. All right, let's talk about Hunter for the second final segment of the show. I am on record, especially if the Bears beat the Vikings, I do believe Hunter will be traded, because it's really it's difficult to squeeze a QB1 onto somebody's roster, but it's pretty damn easy to find teams that raise their hands for pass rushing help. It happens every year. Usually it's the Ravens who just find some cool free agent name. But tell me, are you in agreement? Do you think that Hunter will be traded? And then do you have any destinations if that goes down?
I'll take it one step further. I think regardless of the outcome of the Bears game, Hunter gets traded.
Okay.
Because the Vikings are so, I wouldn't say desperate, but they're, searching for that next quarterback. Kevin O'Connell wants to sort of handpick his guy, and maybe it's Jaren Hall, but if you have a chance at like a Williams or a May, you don't pass that up, regardless of how you feel about Jaren Hall. And I love Jaren Hall. I'm a Jaren Hall truther. But I think you trade Danielle Hunter regardless, because he is the only asset on this team who is going to get you a first-round pick, maybe minus Kirk Cousins. But that we've already discussed why that's unlikely. So you're looking at Danielle Hunter as your way of essentially getting enough draft ammo to potentially trade up for a Drake May or a Caleb Williams. What makes it really tough, though, as far as trading up is concerned, is the Bears might just dominate the first two picks of the draft, and polls just might be like, who is this? Who is this? What?
And that's what he should do.
Caleb Williams?
That's what he should do.
Happening.
Yeah. Can you imagine if we had
that happen at all? So, you have to make it worth the Bears' time if they're even going to consider that. And even then, they might just hang up the phone and laugh. So I do think Danielle Hunter gets traded. The Vikings want that blue chip quarterback, and I think that's a very key element to their competitive rebuild that's been mentioned so many times before. And also, I might add, this free agent class for edge rushers is not that bad. Like if you trade Danielle Hunter for a first round pick and you end up signing Chase Young to pair with Marcus Davenport, if you re-sign him on a relatively affordable contract, then you've got two relatively young pass rushers who are quite capable. I mean, Chase Young might not be Danielle Hunter, but in a Flores scheme, when you're blitzing 50% of the time, maybe you don't need Danielle Hunter. I mean, if you've got Ivan Pace there and you've got, hopefully Brian Asamoah turns into something in 2024, and you continue to build that defense with talented, athletic young players that fit the Flores mold, and they're just going to attack and rush the passer, then you might not need Danielle Hunter necessarily to constantly generate pressure. You're not looking for coverage sacks. You're just going to go out and blitz.
Yeah, I am a complete agreement. I don't think he'll get a first. Because I view him, he's kind of like another one. I don't know if they'd be able to sign him, all right, here's your next big deal within a week. I guess I am of the opinion that he would be a rental and then hopefully fetch a second and some change, but we shall see on that. I would say look out for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. George Edwards is their outside linebackers coach. He brought Danielle Hunter into this world with Mike Zimmer in 2015, and they were attached to the hip for 5 years. And then you of all people know, the Jacksonville Jaguars are evidently nipping at the heels, although their draft capital is a little upside down. So we've covered Hunter and Cousins in the waning moments of the show. Yes or no on these guys in terms of will they be traded? Ezra Cleveland.
No.
Jordan Hicks.
Possibly.
ESPN mentioned him to the Bills for like a 5th rounder because they just lost.
I just don't think an off-ball linebacker has a ton of value.
Yeah, especially a 31-year-old.
Like Hicks, but I do think he's expendable.
What about KJ Osborne?
No, because of the injuries at wide receiver. Even though he's in a contract year, if the Vikings sold low enough on him, maybe there's a team that's interested in a KJ Osborne, but you're also competing with the Broncos who are trying to sell off Sutton and Judy, who Steve Smith had some words.
Yeah. And then Judy couldn't show him up. He couldn't redeem it. Thought he was going to have a monster game. And then, I don't know if I'm forgetting. What about Andrew Booth? Is he still safe?
Andrew Booth has no trade value, but I think you're forgetting Harrison Smith.
Oh, they're not going to trade him? Are you nuts?
Well, hold on a second there, because here's the thing with Harrison Smith. I don't exactly know what his trade value would be from a sense of he's an old safety. We just extended him this offseason, or we redid his contract.
He took a pay cut.
Those lines. But he's Harrison Smith, Someone's got to be interested in him. The Vikings, they have Lewisine, obviously, and they drafted Jay Ward. But who would be that third safety if Smith left? It'd be Theo Jackson. And I think the Vikings are surprisingly high on him, more than the fans would be, because they kept 6 safeties on the roster.
You
don't need 6 safeties. That's overkill, even for Brian Flores defenses.
You consider Metellus a cornerback now?
Huh?
You consider Metellus a cornerback?
Safety. So I would consider the 6 safeties to be Smith, Bynum, Metellus, Scene, Ward, and Theo Jackson.
Yeah, it's a bunch. All right, well, that's a hot take. You should run with that in your writing travels. That Harrison Smith could be dealt, because I don't know. He seems like he'd ride it out to the bitter end to me. But
I don't even know. Maybe Danielle Hunter does get traded for a first. Jacksonville, if they wanted Hunter, like Wolfson reported, they probably have to give up a 2024 first. So we'll see.
But the other thing with that, and then I'll let you go, is where does he play? They have Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker. It's not like they're hurting. And you can't just put him on. You can't put Hunter on the bench. I mean, will they just rush 3 guys all the time, edge rushers?
I don't want to get too deep into it. I don't know a lot about the Jags roster, but I will say when you have that much talent, you find a way to make it work.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, my man, let's try, schedules permitting, I'm sure we'll have some on and off weeks. Let's try to make Friday our regular day. I enjoyed a conversation, level-headed. I love that analysis. It's Tyler Ireland, or at Tyler Ireland NFL on Twitter, correct?
Correct.
All right, man, we'll talk to you in about 1 week, maybe talking about the 2-4 Vikings, maybe talking about the 1-5 Vikings.
Awesome. Happy to be on.
All right, take it easy, man.
All right, you as well.